වාණිජ, විද්‍යා, කලා, ගණිත, තාක්ෂණවේදය, විෂය ධාරාවන් වල සියලුම විෂයන් සඳහා දැන් නැනපවුර YouTube channel ඔස්සේ නැරඹිය හැක.
ආයිබෝවන් හැමෝටම දැන් තියෙන්නේ අපේ උසස් පෙළ ඉංග්‍රීසි මීඩියම් වලින් Econ කරන අපේ දුවදරුවන් වෙනුවෙන් Econ සෙමින එක. ඉතින් ඒ සඳහා අපිත් එක්ක අපේ ආදරණීය ආචාර්ය ශ්‍රීමාල් මුද්‍රවරස එකතු වෙලා ඉන්නවා. ඊට කලින් කියන්න ඕනේ අද දින ඔයගලන්ගේ යාළුවන්ට සම්බන්ධ වෙන්න බැරි වුණා නම් ඒ අයට කියන්න YouTube එකේ අද දේශනය නරඹන්න පුළුවන් කියලා. ඒ වගේම අපේ සර් අපිත් එක්ක කලින් දේශනයට සම්බන්ධ වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් ඒවා ඔයගලන්ට නැරඹීමේ හැකියාව තියෙනවා YouTube channel එකට ගියොත්. ඉතින් දිගටම නනපවරත් එක්ක එකතු වෙලා ඉන්න කියලා ආරාධනා කරනවා. එහෙනම් මේ ආරාධනය අද අපිත් එක්ක එකතු වෙලා ඉන්න අපේ ආදරණීය ආචාර්ය ශ්‍රීමාල් මුද්‍රවර සර්ට. අයිබෝන් සර්.
Hey, අයිබෝන්. Okay, you can see my screen. Right, since your mics are disabled, you can always chat with me and send me a direct message. Don't send it to all, right? Send it to me as a direct message if you want to ask any question, right? Or if you want any clarification to be made, still you can chat. Send me a chat message, or you can raise your hands. I think it's not disabled. And I'll value your comments, right? Even when you're watching the YouTube live streaming, or you're watching this video after some time, please comment under the video, so that I want you to comment the lessons that you want me to do in the future, right? Any question that you want, any clarification, right? So I would like to help. Okay, today we are going to discuss about labor force, right? And also my plan is to discuss few more data that is relevant to our lessons, right? As I was telling you, you can always ask questions, right? Send me a chat message. You can always ask questions, right? I value that, because then all I know that you are not sleeping and listening to me, right? So it's 9 to 11, so time that you may feel sleepy, but still, right, keep your eyes up and listen. Today we are going to discuss about labor force, right? This part comes under economic growth and development as the latter part of the unit, competency level 11.7. If you have any I don't know how much you have covered in your school, right? If you have already covered this part, it will be clearer for you. But still, if you have not covered this part with your teachers, right, I'll do my best to teach you in a very simple manner. So economic growth and development lesson is focused on understanding the important macroeconomic objective of achieving the economic growth and development of a country. Economic growth is a continuous increase in the GDP of a country, whereas development is a multidimensional process where indicators like HDI measures how this economic growth can feed into the economy, right? So in that lesson, we learn about labor force, right? So before coming to the labor force, we should understand few things, right? So we begin from the media population, right? We take the media population because it gives us average value without taking the population at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year. We take the media population because it will give us an average value. And from this media population, first we subtract the dependents, right? Now, who are dependents? How do we define dependence in Sri Lanka is really important, and it is being questioned several times in the paper, right? So DCS is defining about dependence in Sri Lanka. So according to them, dependents are children below 14 years, right? So it is 14 and below, right? So in Sri Lanka, all the children below 14 years of age is considered in the dependence. Right? Okay, so dependence in Sri Lanka defined as children 14 and below, right? So something that you have to remember that DCS in Sri Lanka does not define the upper limit of the dependence, but in other countries, mostly 65 and above are considered dependents. But in Sri Lanka, we don't have the upper limit. We have only 14 and below, right? So the children below 14 are considered to be dependents. So all right, people above 15 and above are belonging to the working age population, right? Hope it is clear for you. So this was 10, right, before, right? If you are doing papers little far away, you will come across the answer given is given as 10 and below, right? But now it is 14 and below, so not needed to remember but is old, right? Remember that children below 14 and 14 of years belong to the dependents in Sri Lanka. That is how the DCS defined. DCS is the Department of Census and Statistics. They are the legal authority. They are the authority who's compiling national accounts in Sri Lanka, and they are the authority responsible for keeping demographic data, right? So they are defining it as 14 and below, right? Exactly, right? Okay. So when we take off the dependence from the media population, we get the working age population. So it should be 15 and above, right? So working age population in Sri Lanka is 15 and above, right? From this working age population, we take off the inactive population, right? What do you mean by inactive population? It is the population which is either not able to work or not willing to work, right? So from the working age population, if you subtract the inactive population, right, economically inactive population, which is the population who are not able to work or not willing to work, right? So some are willingly keeping away from working, some are unable to work, right? Then we get the labor force. So labor force, right, is the total number of people who are willing and able to work, right? So labor force is comprises of all the people who are willing and able to work, right? Inactive population is the is comprises of all the people who are not willing to work or not able to work. So when it comes to inactive population, I'll come back to that again. We have housewives, full-time students, totally disabled, voluntarily idling, right? Now you are full-time students, right? You are belonging to the working age population because most of you are above 50, but you don't belong to the labor force as you're not willingly, you're not willing to work. You're willingly keeping away from work because you are full-time students. So even your housewives, even your mother who's not at home, right, not doing a job and taking care of you, belong to the inactive population. Is that clear? Right. I told you before that in Sri Lanka we don't have the upper limit in dependence. Right. In other countries, 65 and above are considered dependents, but in Sri Lanka we don't have that upper limit. Right. Maybe there are technical difficulties in defining the upper limit. Then we find out Prime Minister and the Minister also belong to that category. Maybe that's the reason they are not defining it. But in Sri Lanka, if they are retired, they belong to the inactive population, right? So retired old age belongs to the inactive population, right? Okay. Hope you understood. So from the labor force, right? We in the labor force there are two categories, right? One is right from the people who are willing and able to work, the people who cannot find a job, belongs to the unemployment, right? And the from the people who are willing and able to work, people who can find a job belongs to the employment, right? Now here there's something that you have to understand, right? When we calculate the employment rate and the unemployment rate, right? In Sri Lanka, unemployment rate in 2020 was 5.1%. 2021 it was 5.1%. 2020 it was 5.5%. Right, this 5.5% is not from the media population. So when we say unemployment rate is 5.5%, right, it doesn't say that 5.5% of the media population is unemployed. They are not finding jobs. No, it is not even 5.5% of the working age population of people above the 15, right, that belongs to the unemployment. Right, it is 5.5% of labor force. It is 5.5% of people who are willing and able to work, right? So the country does not calculate the unemployment rate from the mid-year population, not from the working age population. It is from the labor force. So if you put the employment and unemployment together, you get the labor force. So if a country finds an unemployment of 5.5%, that means they have 94.5% employment. Exactly. And this total should equal 100%. Because we calculate the employment rate and the unemployment rate from the labor force. Okay. Hope you understood. Again, a reminder. If you have any question, you can post to me now. If you are watching later, even in the comment section, you post any question you have. I'll try to get back to you. Also comment the lessons that you want me to cover in the future. Okay. We will come back to data, so Geetma is asking, sir, what is the unemployment rate in 2020? We have all the data in the slideshow. You will come to this data in the news in the slides to come. Okay. So this is what we already discussed. Sri Lankan how Sri Lanka calculates their labor force, So from the working age population, that is 15 years and above, we have economically active population and also economically inactive population, so from the economically active population, that is labor force, which is who are the people who are willing and able to work, who can find a job, belongs to the employed population. Who cannot find a job belongs to the unemployed population. In the economically inactive population, we find full-time students, person engaged in HH's household duties, that is housewives, retired old age, infirmed, disabled, that's people who are sick and disabled, potential labor force, okay, so these are the categories belonging to the economically inactive population, so these are the notes of the things that we have discussed already. Working age population is the people who are persons who are 15 and above, according to Sri Lankan definition. As I said, international definition is different from Sri Lanka, different countries might define their working age population in a different way, in Sri Lanka, we define it as the population 15 and above, then we discuss dependents. So dependents are the people who are belonging to 14 and below, so if you have not done these parts with your teachers at school, you can get down these notes, what you can do is take a snapshot, okay. Then what is dependency ratio? this is something really important, right? So in our lesson here today, our main focus is to tap these two questions that are asked in the MCQs, right? There'll be a definite question coming from this part from the MCQs. That is an easy one, right? In order to get that, you need the equations, right? So one of the equations that is really important is dependency ratio. So what do you mean by dependency ratio, right? Dependency ratio can right? Dependency ratio is how much of population is dependent compared to the working age population. So we already learned that dependents are people, right? In Sri Lanka, dependents are the persons belonging below 14 years of age, right? If you divide that from the population 15 and above, that is working age population, and multiplied it from 100, you get the dependency ratio. So if the dependency ratio is 50%, which is in Sri Lanka, dependency ratio is around 50%, right? That means out of 100 in the working age population, we have around 50, right, under them as dependents, right? So some countries like China have a higher dependency ratio, which is the economic issue that they always address because they have a aging population. That's the reason why they have a higher dependency ratio. But in Sri Lanka, that will not be a problem because we are not taking the age above 65 and above as our dependents, right? So in Sri Lanka, all the dependents are the persons below 14 of age. So dependency ratio is dependence over working age population into 100, right? Then we discuss what is economically active population and what is economically inactive population, right? So economically active population is the labor force, that is who are people who are willing and able to work, right? They belong to the labor force. In Sri Lanka, we have had 8.553 million people in the labor force in the 2021, right? So compared to 2020 and 2029, there's an increase in the labor force in numbers, right? That is normally happening with the population growth. So economically active population are the people who are employed and unemployed. That means the people who are willing and able to work and who can find a job, and the people who cannot find a job, right, belong to the labor force. So more importantly, when we calculate the labor force, right, we add the employed and unemployed together. So by adding the employed population to the unemployed population, we can find the labor force. So as I said, the equations are really important, right? So try to remember these equations. Labor force equals employed plus unemployed, right? Then who belongs to the inactive population, which we have already discussed? So inactive population are the people who are either willingly keeping away or not able to work, right? So some are infirmed, some are sick, they cannot work, and some are keeping away willingly, right? So full-time students, person engaged in household duties, retires old age, right? Then infirmed, disabled, voluntary idling, right? These are the categories of the people belonging to inactive population. So because we are not taking 65 and above as our dependents, the people who are retired and old age belongs to inactive population in Sri Lanka, right? But in another country, that part of population might be considered as dependents, right? But not in Sri Lanka, right? So remember that, because that can be a point where you go wrong in your answers. Now this happened in 2018 paper, right, where they asked about the, as I remember, the dependency ratio, and the answer was not there, right? The answer was not there because according to the question, 65 and above were considered as dependents. Is that clear? Right? So that is international standards, but not in Sri Lanka. We don't define the 65 and above as dependents, but in 2018, that was the case. Is that clear? So when you do the calculations, if you don't get the answer by just considering only the population below 14 years of age, right, then check whether you get the answer by adding the people above 65 and years of age as dependents, right? Okay, so we will move on. Right, this is another important equations to remember: labor force participation rate. This is something really important for us as economic, as a country also, because our labor force participation rate is really low and it keeps on reducing, right? Which is really the government should address. You can see here I have given the figures, right? In 2020 it is 50.6 and 2021 it is 49.9%, right? In 2019 it was bigger than 2020. So as the years go by, we find a decrease in the labor force participation rate, which is not good for a country. So labor force participation rate is a measure where we measure how much of people from the working age belongs to the labor force. So working age population is the part of the population above 15 and 15 years of age, as we define it in Sri Lanka. But from this population, everyone is not participating in labor force because some are either willingly keeping away or some are sick, some are disabled, right? So if you compare the amount of labor force or the people who are willing and able to work, right, compared to the working age population, that is the people who are above 15, right, we find that the participation is not that satisfactory in Sri Lanka. Exactly, right? So 49.9% means out of the people, right, out of the 100 people in the working age population, that is out of the 100 people 15 and above, only 49.9, that is 50 people, that is only half of those people, right, are willing and able to work, are contributing to the economy of the country, right? So 50, that is almost half of it, is keeping away as inactive population, right? So this mainly happens, children, due to housewives, right? In Sri Lanka, this happens mainly due to housewives. Okay, so we find right, data shocking, right? In Sri Lanka, from the university intake, 64% are women, right? 64% are female, right? Only 36%, right, get qualified into the campuses, into the university system of Sri Lanka, right? And labor force participation rate of female is only 36%, right? So around 64% of the women are not participating in the labor force, but in our university system, they find room for 64%, right? So that is a pathetic situation where women learn and they stay at home and maybe don't get their contribution to the economy, right? So government should address this issue. They should empower the women. They should get their labor into the system, right? You can think of ways, right, where the government can where you can suggest the government how this women labor force can be empowered, right? How we get the participation of the female into the labor force, right? So in Sri Lanka, it is really low, right? This 50% also because we have around 73% male participation in the labor force. But when it comes to the female, there is only 35% participation in the labor force. That means if you take 100 female, only 35 are willing and able to work, whereas 65 are either not willing or not able to work, right? Hope you understood what I said. Our QA, right? Sri Lanka we make a local issue අපේ labor force participation rate එක ශ්‍රම දායකත්වය ගත්තම තියෙන්නේ 50%. ඒතර වැඩ කළ හැකි ජනතාවගෙන් 50%යි අපේ ආර්ථිකයට දායක වෙන්නේ. ඒතර 50%ක්ම එක්කෝ අසනීපෙන් එක්කෝ කැමැත්තෙන් ඉවත් වෙලා සිටිනවා ලංකාවේ ආර්ථික කටයුතු වල. right? මේකට හේතු ප්‍රධාන හේතුව තමයි housewives. right? ගෘහණියන් හැටියට ගෙවල් වල ළමයි බලාගෙන ලංකාවේ යුනිවර්සිටි සිස්ටම් එකේ 64%ක්ම වෙන් වෙන්නේ ෆීමේල් ලට. right? යුනිවර්සිටි ස්ටුඩන්ට්ස් ලගෙන් 36යි ඉන්නේ මේල්. right? ඉතින් 64%ක් ලංකා යුනිවර්සිටි සිස්ටම් එක ෆීමේල් ලා ඩිග්‍රී හෝල්ඩර්ස් ලා හැටියට එළියට දානකොට ඒ ෆීමේල් ලගෙන් 35යි right ජොබ් එකක් කරන්න ඉදිරිපත් වෙන්නේ. right? ඒතකොට 65%ක්ම ජොබ් එකක් නොකර right ගෙවල් වලට වෙලා ඉන්නවා. ඉතින් මේක රටේ ආර්ථිකයේ දියුණුවට ලොකු බලපෑම. right? So we should get this labor into the labor force, right? That's why I said that women empowerment is really important. Okay, we will move on. Just to give you how the labor force participation rate is calculated, right? If there are 100 people in the labor force, right? The labor force participation rate is 50 point. Sorry. Labor force participation rate is 50.6%, right? Then inactive population will be 49.4%. This means out of the 100 people, 50 are participating in the labor force. Another 50 are not participating in the labor force. They are keeping away as housewives, full-time students, or totally disabled or voluntary idling, or maybe retired and old age. Right? So hope you understood. Okay, so we have been discussing what is employment also, right? අපි කතා කළා මොකද්ද employment එක කියන්නේ කියලා, right? So what do you mean by employment is the amount of the people who are willing and able to work and they have found a job, right? So if you take the labor force is the total of employment plus unemployment, right? So if you want to find the employment, you can subtract the unemployment from labor force, right? Because it's the total of employment and unemployment. Unemployment equals labor force minus employment. So all these equations are important when it comes to calculations, right? So right, get down these equations or either take a snapshot and refer to them later, right? Okay, so from the labor force or from the people who are willing and able to work, if we find 95.2% are employed, that means 4.8% are unemployed. So total of these two should be equal to 100, right? So unemployment rate considered as 4.8 says that out of the labor force, 4.8 people are not finding a job, right? So employment ratio during the reference period, persons who worked as paid employees, employers, on account workers, or contributing the family workers are said to be employed. This also includes a person with a job but not at work during the reference period, right? Clear? Okay, so in Sri Lanka we have the employed population, 2020 it is 7.99, and 2021 it is 8.11, right? So employed population is from the labor force who have already found a job, right? Employment ratio is calculated as employed population over labor force into 100. So remember that we are not dividing the employed population from the working age population or from the media population. It should be the labor force part, right? So we have come across a few equations already. One is dependency ratio, labor force participation rate. So both this dependency ratio and the labor force participation rate are calculated to the working age population. So dependency ratio is dependence over working age population into 100. Labor force participation rate is, right, labor force participation rate is labor force over working age population into 100, right? On those two equations we took the ratio to the working age population, but when it comes to employment ratio and unemployment ratio, we find employment ratio to labor force. So out of the labor force, people who are found a job belongs to the employed population. Those who have not found a job belongs to the unemployed population, right? So employment ratio is employed over labor force into 100, right? So unemployment, okay, unemployment is the persons, right, who have not found a job from the labor force, right? So unemployment ratio is calculated as unemployed population over labor force into 100. All these equations are important, right? So as I said, and keep on saying, get them down, right, or take a snapshot. Okay. So people who are willing and cannot find a job belongs to the unemployed population, right? In Sri Lanka, one of the students asked this before. Unemployment rate in 2020 is 5.5%. 2021 it is 5.1%, right? So we have a decrease from 2020 to 2021. That is mainly because in 2020, because of COVID, there was a huge unemployment increase, right? But that was decreased in 2021. But again, right, those data are not yet released. In 2022, probably we will have higher unemployment rate, even higher than 2020, right? If the economy is not going to recover in the last quarter of the year, right? So these values are also important. Remember that, children, right? So these are few data, right, which are important. So 11th unit, right, goes with data. So you cannot get the highest mark from the 11th unit, economic growth and development, without having data, right? So here we have data relevant to 2022, sorry, 2020. That is the year relevant for you. This is all districts are included 15 years and over population, that is working age population, right? So we have a working age population of around 16 million, right? Out of that, 8 million belongs to the labor force, right? So it is only half. So we have labor force participation of only 50.6% in the year 2020, right? That means 40.4% are not participating, right? Employed population had been 7.9 million. Employment rate has been 94.5. That is 5.5% unemployed, right? Unemployed population had been 0.4 million, right? Unemployment rate had been 5.5% in 2020, right? Not in labor force, that is inactive population is 8.2 million, right? That is right, that is the portion of the working age population which does not come under labor force, right? Also compare the male and the female, right? This table will give you understanding about the rural and urban also. If you take the male, right, keep your take your eyes to the labor force participation rate, right? Male labor force participation rate is 71.9, right? Whereas female labor force participation is 32.0, right? So if you take 100 male, 71 are willing and able to work. But if you take 100 female, only 32 are willing to work, 68 are not willing to work, right? Now this is the issue that I was addressing previously, right? 68 people, 68 female are not participating in Sri Lankan economic activities. So which is a catastrophic, right? Which should be addressed, right? Exactly. So as average, we have 50.6% labor force participation rate, right? Have a critical view about this. Very soon, right? If you have the critical view about these, very soon you will remember these values, right? And very easily you will face your exams, right? And Sri Lankan employment rate, if you take 5.5%, but male unemployment rate is only 4%. Female unemployment rate is 8.5%, right? So there's a reason why female are not given a job, right? As male gets a job, right? Not that all the females are not getting jobs. What I'm saying is, right? There's more chance for a male to find a job than a female, right? One reason why female are not encouraged, right, in the workplace because of maternity leave, right? And every company is liable to give around 90 days, 60 days, right, maternity leave. So when they are recruiting female, they think about this. That's one reason why the female labor rate unemployment rate is higher than male unemployment rate. But that is not only the issue. There are other issues also, right? I am talking about the labor law in the country. According to the labor law of the country, right? If a female is breastfeeding, right, they are liable to get 1 hour short leave every day, right? Exactly. So they are the laws in the country. We should respect them, right? And also at the same time, we should find ways to get these female into the economic activities, right? As I said, one reason why these female are not participating in the labor force is because they have to take care of their children. So we need to develop, and the government should make it is a compulsory for every factory, for every office to maintain a daycare center so that they can bring their child, keep their child there and work. That's one way of getting their contribution to the economy. And like China does, they can get the contribution from where they are, right? Right, from their households itself. Okay, so however, these issues should be addressed, right? This issue should be maybe the question that you find in your paper, right? So have that critical view. Okay, right. Some more data about labor force participation, right? We discussed that. Then unemployment rate. In the previous slide, we were discussing the unemployment rate, labor force participation rate of year 2020 only, right? But here we have a comparison from 2012 itself, right? So if you see the labor force participation, you can see how it has reduced over the years, right? So 17 had been good, right? Some years it has developed, but in the recent past, you find labor force, right, participation is decreasing, right, which is not good for a country, right? Okay. Then when it comes to the unemployment rate, we were discussing it by the gender. And if you have the comparison, Sri Lankan unemployment rate in the recent past has increased, right, from 4.8 to 5.5, right? 2021, it has reduced to 5.51%, but again in 2022, probably the unemployment rate will increase, right? So these are the issues, right, that we have. Unemployment rate increasing is not good for a country. Then if you take by age, right, if you get older, right, there is more chance that you get a job, right? Exactly. So normally the older population has low unemployment rate compared to the younger population, right? Exactly. Then when it comes to education qualification, more qualifications you have, less chance that you get a job. That's the figure says, right? Exactly. So if you are, right, having higher qualification, right, there is higher chance of you getting unemployed in the country. That is making it because when you have higher education, you are looking for better jobs, right? And those better jobs, if they are not available, you are getting unemployed in the country, right? Again, also remember how this employment is distributed among the sectors, right? By industry, 27% of the population labor force works in the agriculture sector, but their contribution is only yeah, around 7%, right? So out of 27 in the population, right, which is engaged in the agriculture, they are contributing to the GDP only, right, around 7%, right, which is not a good indicator. Industry, we have around 26.9 people, right, percent people working in the industry out of the labor force, and their contribution is more than that. That's good. And 46% of the labor force, right, employed population belongs to the service sector, and their contribution is more than that, right? So what is lagging is agricultural contributions. So though there are so many people working in the agriculture sector, right, their contribution to the GDP is not that satisfactory, right? Right. So these are the important figures for you, right? Labor market indicators. So most of the things are the things that we have already discussed, right? So when it comes to figures, values, right? I'm not telling you not to remember these values, but right, more importantly, remember them as percentages, right? Labor force participation rate, right, compared to 2019, it has reduced, right, to 50.6, and again in 2021, it is reduced to 49.9%, right, which is not a good indicator. Then the unemployment rate in 2019 had been 4.8. 2020 it has been 5.5. It has increased, right? But again in 2021 it has reduced a bit, right? But probably in 2022 it might increase again, right? So these are the values that you should remember. You can take a snapshot and keep it. I have taken this directly from the CBSL report, right? Also, focus on this departure of foreign employment, right? In 2019, 203,087 people have left the country for foreign employment, right? But in 2020, it has reduced to 53,713, right? That is mainly because of impact of COVID. The country was closed, right? The airports was closed, right? That's the reason why the departures have reduced. Again, in 2021, we find a small increase, but it is not as high as, right, 2019. Remember that Sri Lanka's highest dollar earner is the remittance that are given to us by the people who are working outside the country, right? So we get around 7 billion US dollars every year as remittance coming from the people who are working outside the country, right? So departure for foreign employment is really important for Sri Lanka, right? Although it's not a good way of maintaining an economy, right? We have to increase our production, but still, right? We had a lot of imports, right? But less in exports. So because of that, our trade balance was really high. So somewhat this trade balance was compensated by the contributions given by the people who are working outside the country. Their remittance had been a huge compensation for us, right? Without us running into a dollar crisis, right? But now, because the tourism industry came down, right? We got tourism industry is around 5 billion income earner. It has reduced to around 400 million US dollars. So because of this deficit, because of this right, the reduction in the dollars that we have gained from the tourism, now we have run into a dollar crisis, right? But previously, this dollar crisis was prevented by this remittance coming from outside the countries, and you know that they are right, they are represented in the NSI, net secondary income account, right? So some examples what had happened in the unemployment of Sri Lanka, right? So in 2020 it has reduced, but again in 2021 it has 20 compared to 2019 it has increased, but again it has reduced, right? Again, unemployment rate is high among the educated youth, and comparatively women unemployment rate is higher than the male unemployment rate. In rural sector is relatively high, right? So when it comes to urban areas, you find jobs, right, compared to the rural areas, right? Okay, examples of consequences of unemployment are as follows, right? So when a country runs into unemployment, when the unemployment increases, right, there can be losses of optimum level of production that the society achieves. So when you are not getting this contribution, right, to the economy, we cannot go to our high production, we cannot go to our maximum production, right? Our production will come down. The loss of income due to loss of jobs, right? And the poverty will increase in external migration that you can that is obvious these days. People are trying desperately to leave the country and go to another country, right? Increase in the government expenses, right? Because government needs to give the samurdhi, right? They have to give the social transfers. So because of that, their expenditure will increase. Rise in political and social unrest. Okay, right. So these are the reasons, examples for what happens when there is high unemployment, right? So people will picket, they will strike when they don't have jobs. Simple as that, right? There were few things done in Sri Lanka to get rid of this unemployment. Uh, Gotabaya Rajapaksa suggested a program generating 100,000 employment opportunities that was to empower the uneducated, the less educated people, right? But that didn't work that well, right? Achieving high economic growth, infrastructure, facilities, uh, expanding the industrial base, establishing small-scale industries in the rural areas, providing professional training, increase in foreign employment, expanding the needs for self-employment, right? So there are so many things that the government can do, right? One of the things that the government did was right, banning imports, banning import of vehicles, and they asked all the companies to assemble in the country itself. So there were a lot of opportunities created, a lot of job opportunities created because of assembling vehicles in the country, right? Like Lanka, Ashok Leyland, Ashok, then Demo, they all went for assembling, right? Even United Motors. So because of that, there were jobs created. So government can take actions to create more jobs within the economy, which will be a solution to the ongoing economic crisis, right? Okay, there's another concept called underemployment. Now, this underemployment is different from unemployment. Don't mix them up, right? What is meant by underemployment? Underemployment can exist in different ways. One is employed at a lower level job which does not match for the qualification. So if he's having right more qualifications but doing a job which does not need that much of qualification, he's unemployed, right? Did you understand that? For instance, if a person having a degree and working as a conductor in a bus, right, that means he's underemployed. Is that clear? Right? Even though work full time, receiving low marginal productivity, sometimes he's working, right, but he's not contributing that much. That is also can be underemployed. Did you understand that? Right? That means you have 100 people, right, doing some job, doing some work, and you have 101 people, but there is no much added to the production by the extra person. That is marginal productivity, right? So when the marginal productivity is low, that also can be considered as underemployment, and when it is zero, it is called hidden unemployment, right? Lack of full-time work or less working hours. Now, if you take the state workers, right, they were fighting for 1,000 rupees per day, right? But that is also not happening every day. Most of these state workers get only work for now, right, around 2 to 3 days every week. So rest of the days they are not finding jobs, they are not finding work, right? So we cannot say that they are unemployed as they work, but they get only 2 days to work, 3 days to work. That means most of the days they are not working. So that is called underemployment too, right? So all these forms can create underemployment, right? Uh, so this was a question asked in the paper: what is meant by disguised unemployment or hidden unemployment? If the workers' marginal production is zero, even the workers work full time, it is called hidden unemployment, right? That means, right, if 100, suppose 100 people, right, produce 1,000 units, and you get one more person to the same company, right, and still they produce 1,000, right, which means the 101st person has not added anything to the production. His productivity is zero, right? Actually, it doesn't say that the 101st person is not working, right? But as a whole, you find he has not added to the total, which means even without him, still you can go to the same production, right? So it's like that person has not worked. So that's why we call it disguised unemployed. Cannot be seen, but there is some sort of unemployed. It's also called hidden unemployment, right? Economic cost of unemployment as follows, right? So when the people are unemployed, right? You find economic production reducing, wastage of labor, right? There can be unequal income distribution, decrease in labor productivity, there can be poverty created, and also people, right, going for antisocial activities, right? So these are the consequences of underemployment, right? So we have discussed the theory parts required for this lesson. Now we will do some calculations, right? Okay, so before I try with you, I want you to try alone, right? This is 2019 paper. Okay, when you are finding the answers, always write the equation, right? That will help you to remember the equation, right? And also to get the answers correctly, right? Okay, I'll give you 2-3 minutes. Do it quickly. Those who have found the answers can send me a message. Okay, I have lined up a few questions for you to get a good understanding. So we will do this first. Hope you will get the next few answers. The table below shows the employment data for a hypothetical economy in which year is the rate of unemployment is 20% and the labor force participation rate is 60%, right? So we will go year by year. First year, how do you find the unemployment rate? So first we will find the unemployment ratio. Unemployment is unemployment population divided by labor force into 100. Here we are given that unemployment population is 3, but we are not given labor force. So in order to get the labor force, what we do is we add the employment and unemployment, right? So we get 15 labor force. Out of that, 3 people are unemployed. So what will be the unemployment ratio? So it will be 3 divided by 12 plus 3, that is 15. So 3 divided by 15 into 100, you get 20%, right? So the unemployment ratio will be 20%. Clear, children? Then we also asked, so this tally with the question given. So first year might be your answer, but we have to check the labor force participation rate also. Labor force participation rate is labor force divided by working age population into 100. So here we found that labor force is 15, right? So 15 divided by 25, because working age population is 25, into 100, right? You get 60%, right? So it's not necessary that we look for the other questions, but other answers, but you can do that also, right? So the answer will be year 1. Okay, so year 1, unemployment rate is 20%, labor force participation rate is 60%. Okay, right. We'll go to the next question. This is 2019 old syllabus question, right? Try to get the answers for both. I'll give you a few minutes, and when you get the answers, you can text me. Okay, few of you send me the answers, right? We'll check. The table below shows the market data for hypothetical economy. Based on the data, which of the following statement is correct? So here they have used two things: labor force participation rate and rate of unemployment. So we'll check both, right? So if you first check the labor force participation rate, right? In 2017, there are 2 years, right? In 2017, labor force is 30, and number of employed is 27. Household population, working age population is 60. So out of 60, 30 are participating. So it is 50% participation rate. In 2018, out of 80, 36 are participating. That is around 45% participation rate, right? So if you just check the first one, the labor force participation rate is in 2018 is lower than 2017. That is correct, right? Then again, the labor force participation rate in 2018 was higher than 2017 is wrong, right? The labor force participation rate in 2018 was exactly the same. That is also wrong, right? Then they have also asked about the rate of unemployment. So we will find that, right? Unemployment population, right, is 3. How do you find 3? Out of labor force 30, 27 are employed. That means 3 are unemployed. So 3 divided by 13 to 100, you get unemployment rate of 10%. In 2018, out of 36 to 32 are employed. That means the unemployed population is 4. So 4 divided by 36, that is labor force into 100, you get 11.11. If you compare these two answers, the rate of unemployment in 2018 was lower than 2017. No, right? 2018 it is higher. Then the rate of unemployment in 2018 was exactly the same. No. So the correct answer, the only correct answer we found was the first one, right? So those who went wrong, hope they understood. Right, then we'll go to the next question. The total dependency ratio in Sri Lanka is defined as the percentage of population over 65 years of age. No, we have limit taken. Ratio of number of children to adults in population, right? Ratio of number of children to adults in population. Percentage of population below 10, no. Percentage of population below 15 years and above 64, no. Upper limit of it defined karanne. Ratio of non-working age population to working age population, right? That will be a better answer, right? Ratio of non-working age population, that is 14 and below, to working age population, that is 15 and above. It is dependence over working age population into 100, right? Now try this. This is 2018. Okay, here we ask the total dependency ratio of this country, right? So you already know dependency ratio equals dependence of working age population into 100. But who are dependents? As I said, in Sri Lanka, it should be 14 and below, right? But if you take only 14 and below 6 and divide it from 24, that is working age population, right? 6 divided by 24, we get 1 over 4 into 100. The answer should be 25%. But this 25% is not given, right? So there is no answer according to Sri Lankan definition, right? It's not given. So then we will go with the international definition. In the international definitions, they take 65 and above also as dependent. So we have 10 dependents, right? Divide by working age population 15 and 64, 15 to 64. Then 10 divided by 20 into 100, you get 50%. That is given as an answer, right? So what I said is still there, right? Sri Lankan dependency ratio. Dependents are calculated as children below 14 years and below 14 years of age. Exactly. But you might get questions like that, right? Where international standards is measured, is asked. Exactly, right? Okay, now try this question. Okay, children, right? Yeah, I gave you a hint, right? What we are given is not the employment, we are giving the employment rate. So employment rate is 80, right? Unemployed population is 3. See, if employment rate is 80%, right? If it is 80%, then unemployment rate should be 20%, right? Because the total of employment rate and unemployment rate should equal 100. So unemployment is 3. So 3 million equals 20%. So if 3 million equals 20%, you can find the labor force if you look for what is equal to 100%. That you can find by dividing 3 from 20 and multiplying it from 100. right? So when you do that, you get the labor force of 15 million, right? Now you can calculate the labor force participation rate. Labor force is 15 and working age population is 25. So 15 divided by 25 into 100, right? You get the labor force participation rate, that is 60%. Okay. Okay, we'll go to the next question. This is 2016. Total dependency ratio is the ratio of, right, children to adults in the population, unemployed to employed population in the labor force, right? Population over 65 years age to 100 persons in the working age population, right? Population below 15 years of age to population over 15 years of age, right? That sounds better answer. Population below 15 years of age and above 59, no, right? So we get 4 as the answer. The population below 15 years of age dependence to over 15 years age, it is working age population. So dependence over working age population into 100 is what is known as dependency ratio, right? This is 2015. It is easy one. Can you all try it quickly? Okay. So unemployment ratio is unemployed population over labor force into 100. We have said unemployed population is 50,000, right? And employed population is 450,000. So if you add them together, you get the labor force, which is 500,000. So 50,000 divided by 500,000 into 100, you get 10% as the answer. So that will be the unemployment rate. Okay, so those are the questions that I line up for you, right? There are a few more things that comes under unemployment, right? The types of unemployment. Okay, there are 3 types of unemployment, right? Beginning from cyclical unemployment. Now, this cyclical unemployment comes right from the cyclical movement of the real GDP. So when the real GDP comes down in the business cycle or in a recession, right, you find unemployment rate is increasing. So that cyclical unemployment is what is meant here, right? Remember, these are all natural rate of unemployment, right? In every country, there is around 3% a natural rate. That means a rate that cannot be avoided. So ඕනෑම රටක 3ක් විතර ඒගොල්ලගේ රැකියාව අවම අඩු කරන්න බෑ. එතනින් එහාට අඩු කරන්න බෑ. ඒක ස්වභාවිකයි. ඉතින් අපි ඒකට කියනවා natural rate of unemployment කියලා. පැහැදිලිද? එතකොට එහෙම natural unemployment එකක් ඇති වෙන්න පුළුවන් හේතු තුන තමයි අපි මෙතන කතා කරන්නේ. එකක් තමයි cyclical unemployment. So cyclical unemployment is the main, right? One of the reasons for the natural rate of unemployment. So if a country has a natural rate of around 3% and they have achieved 97% employment, that country can consider them that they have achieved the full employment. You understand that? So full employment is never 100% because there will be a natural rate always. So if they have achieved around 97% employment, that country can be considered as a country which has achieved full employment, right? So one reason why there is natural rate of unemployment is cyclical unemployment that comes because of ups and downs in the real GDP. The second is the frictional unemployment, right? This happens mainly because of right, going from one job to another, right? Exactly. So when you leave one job and look for another job, right? There'll be a period where you get unemployed, that is known as frictional unemployment. This mainly happens also when the students who are doing their A-levels, out of their A-level, they're looking for a job, they belong to the labor force, and all of a sudden they won't get a job. So during that period, they will be frictionally unemployed. So that is also unavoidable. That's why it's also come under, right, a natural rate of unemployment. The other is the structural unemployment. This comes because of the mismatch between the qualifications that the students have, that the employees have, and the qualifications actually demanded by the producer, right? Structural unemployment can occur when there is new technology. That technology right, reduces the amount of laborers required, right? So if a person is losing their job because his work is now done with a machine, then he's becoming structurally unemployed, right? So hope you understood what is meant by these 3 types of unemployment. Okay. I put up few data also relevant for you. These can be questioned in the MCQs, right? That's why I put them in the line for you. One is ease of doing business. Now, this is not relevant to labor force, right? These indicators are relevant to economic growth and development lesson. So there can be MCQs coming from these types of index, right? Mostly they ask who are in the first, who are in the last, and what is the rate of Sri Lanka, right? In the last year paper, right, the year before, they asked the rate of 3 indicators, right, in the essay type question also. Okay, so you should know this. So ease of doing business measures how easily a person can begin a business and run a business. And it is very difficult for us to begin a business in Sri Lanka. That's why we are in the 99th in the ranking, right, out of 190 countries, right? New Zealand is the first in the ease of doing business index, and Somalia is the last, right? Sri Lanka is in the 99th position. Then global competitiveness report, right? How a country, how competitive a country is, right? Now, when it comes to international trade, if you have already done it, we discuss 3 main theories One is comparative advantage theory, absolute advantage theory, and the third theory that was added in the recent syllabus change is competitive advantage theory, right? Theory of competitive advantage. A country gets a value, right? A country get an advantage when they can produce a product with higher value. That is what is meant by competitive advantage. So global competitiveness index is some sort of a measure that that measure the country's competitiveness, how much value that they have added to their product. According to that, also Sri Lanka is doing poor. That we are in the 84th position, whereas Singapore is the first, right? That is most competitive country in the world, and Chad is the last, right? Then corruption perception index, right? This comes under happiness index also. This is measuring our attitudes towards corruption, right? Now we tend to generalize corruption, right? Because one person does it, another person does it, it doesn't become right, right? Corruption is always wrong. Is that clear, right? So corruption perception index measures how countries look at their corruption. And Sri Lanka in the 94th position. That means our attitude towards corruption is not that satisfactory, right? That is not that good. Denmark is the first in that index, and South Sudan is the last. Then quality of life index, or where to be born index, right? So we ask people, where you like to be born again, right? And they select a country based on the facilities given in that country, the peacefulness, the law enforcement, right? And Sri Lanka in that also is in 84th. That means Sri Lanka is not favored by many to be born again. Switzerland is the first, and Nigeria is the last in this index. Remember these, especially the where Sri Lanka is, and who is in the first and who is in the last. They will be important, right? Okay. Time for questions. Is there any question you want to ask? Okay, then we'll call it a day. Shall we wind it up? Okay, it seems like the host is not available, right? So we'll call it a day. Okay.
Thank you so much sir. අපිත් එක්ක එකතු වෙලා අපේ දුවදරුවන් වෙනුවෙන් econ දේශනයක් පැවැත්වුවාට ඒ වගේම කියන්න වෙන අද දින සම්බන්ධ වෙන්න බැරි වුණා නම් එනපොර YouTube channel එකෙන් අද මේ දේශන නැරඹීමේ හැකියාව තියෙනවා. ආරාධනා කරනවා දිගටම නැනපොරත් එක්ක එකතු වෙලා ඉන්න කියලා. අපි ඉදිරි links යමු කරන්න අපේ Telegram group එකට. Telegram group එකේ නැත්නම් link එක තියෙනවා YouTube channel එකේ click කරලා Telegram group එකට සම්බන්ධ වෙන්න. එහෙනම් නැවත වතාවක් අද අපිට සම්බන්ධ වුණු අපේ ආදරණීය ආචාර්ය ශ්‍රීමල් මధుරව සර්ට අපේ හදපිරි ස්තුතිය පුද කරනවා. අපි එහෙනම් තවත් දේශනයකින් නැවත හමු වෙමු.
Okay, God bless you, children.
වාණිජ, විද්‍යා, කලා, ගණිත, තාක්ෂණ වේදය විෂය ධාරාවන් වල සියලුම විෂයන් සඳහා දැන් නැනපවුර YouTube චැනලය ඔස්සේ නැරඹිය හැක.